My own mother told me to serve my sister like a maid on her wedding weekend. But she didn't know I was about to become her new boss. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Haley Moore. I'm 28 years old, and for the past several years, I've been helping my mom run our small family motel in South Carolina. It's not fancy, but it's been home. My dad built it years ago before he passed away, and ever since then, it's been me keeping things together, fixing pipes, checking in guests, handling the accounts, doing everything that keeps the doors open. My mom says she's the owner, but honestly, she hasn't really managed it in years. She mostly sits behind the counter or watches TV while I handle everything else. Then there's my younger sister, Tiffany. She's always been the favorite. Growing up, she never had to lift a finger. I was the responsible one, the one who stayed home to help while she got to live her dream life. Parties, college out of state, and now, a big wedding to a rich man named Derek. My mom couldn't stop bragging about it. Tiffany's marrying up, she'd say, and maybe she can help us one day. It always made me feel like I wasn't enough, like all my work here meant nothing. When Tiffany called and said she wanted to host her wedding guests at our motel, I thought maybe it was her way of including me, of appreciating what I'd done. I even started cleaning and decorating early, wanting everything to be perfect. I told myself this could be a moment to reconnect, maybe even fix our strained relationship. But I was wrong. A week before the wedding, my mom called me into the kitchen. She didn't even look up from her coffee when she said, "Tiffany wants everything to be perfect, so I need you to handle all the serving and cleaning that weekend. Think of yourself as the maid. You're good at that sort of thing." I froze. I thought she was joking at first. I'd been managing this entire motel for years, and now she wanted me to be the maid at my own sister's wedding? She didn't even say it kindly, just like it was expected. When I didn't answer right away, she looked at me and said, "Don't give me that face, Haley. This is Tiffany's big day. The least you can do is help your sister look good in front of her guests." My chest burned. I wanted to scream, to tell her how unfair it was. But I didn't. I just nodded and walked away. Later that night, I sat alone in one of the empty rooms and cried. It wasn't about being asked to work. I'd done worse before. It was about how little I mattered to them. To my mom, I wasn't a daughter. I was free labor. I didn't know it then, but that moment, those cruel words, would change everything. Because if they wanted me to act like a maid, I'd let them. For now. But soon, they were going to learn who really owned the place. The morning Tiffany arrived with her wedding party, everything changed. My mom handed me a wrinkled beige uniform and told me to put it on. It looked like something from a cheap diner, faded fabric, missing buttons, and a stain near the pocket. She said it was appropriate for my role that weekend. I stood there holding it, feeling small. She didn't even thank me for preparing the rooms or fixing the leaky pipes earlier that week. To her, I was just part of the staff now. When Tiffany walked in, she barely looked at me. She was surrounded by her bridesmaids, all dressed in matching pastel robes, laughing and carrying champagne glasses. Her voice was sharper now, more polished, like she was trying to sound rich. "Oh, perfect," she said when she saw me in uniform. At least Mom managed to find someone to handle the mess. Everyone laughed, and I forced a smile, pretending it didn't bother me. For the next few days, I worked from sunrise to midnight. I cleaned rooms, carried suitcases, served food, and even fetched coffee for Tiffany's friends when they snapped their fingers at me. My mom watched it all and said nothing. She just smiled, proud that Tiffany looked glamorous in front of her wealthy guests. Sometimes she even joined them, drinking wine and talking about how lucky she was to have such a successful daughter. She never mentioned me. Not once. At dinner one evening, I walked into the lobby with a tray of drinks and heard Tiffany's voice behind the door. She was sitting with Derek and a few of his friends. "Once we're married," she said, "I'll convince him to buy this place. It's old and ugly, but the land is valuable. Then I can finally kick Haley out for good. She's been playing manager for too long." Laughter followed. I stood frozen, holding the tray, my hands shaking so badly that the glasses rattled. My mom's laugh joined theirs. She said, "Well, she's good at cleaning. Maybe she can find a job somewhere else." My throat tightened. My own mother thought it was funny. I walked away quietly and went outside, standing behind the motel where no one could see me. The night air was cold, and I tried to steady my breathing. For years, I had kept this place alive while they treated it like a burden. I worked through storms, broken heaters, and endless bills. And now they were planning to throw me out like I was nothing. When I went back inside, I kept my head down and finished serving. I didn't argue. I didn't cry in front of them. But something in me hardened that night. The hurt turned into something sharper, a quiet kind of strength. They saw me as the maid, but that wouldn't last forever. They didn't know what I knew. And they had no idea that their laughter would soon turn into silence. The night of the rehearsal dinner felt like the longest night of my life. The motel's small banquet room was decorated with white lights and cheap flowers, but everyone acted like it was a five-star venue. Tiffany was glowing in her designer dress, surrounded by Derek's rich friends, her bridesmaids, and our mother, who looked proud enough to burst. I stayed in the background, wearing that same dull beige uniform, carrying trays of food and clearing plates while pretending not to exist. At one point, Tiffany tapped her glass and said she wanted to make a toast. She thanked everyone for coming, thanked Derek for being the love of her life, and then turned toward me. And of course, she said with a fake smile, let's not forget my big sister, Haley, our very own maid of honor, or just the maid, I guess. Laughter filled the room. Someone even clapped. I froze in place, holding a tray, feeling the heat rise to my face. Tiffany smirked and added, you know, she's been practicing for this role her whole life. No one cleans toilets better than Haley. More laughter. My mom didn't say a word. She just smiled like it was all harmless fun. I tried to keep my head down, but my hands were shaking. I wanted to disappear. As soon as I cleared the last plate, I slipped out of the room and went to the small staff area behind the kitchen. I locked the door and sat on the floor. The noise from the party faded into muffled sounds through the walls. My chest hurt, and the tears I'd been holding back for days finally came. I cried for everything. For the years I gave up, for the way my mom looked right through me, for how small they made me feel in a place that used to be my father's pride. I didn't hear the door open at first. It was Mr. Carter, one of the older guests who'd been staying at the motel for years whenever he visited town. He'd seen me grow up behind the counter. He knocked gently and said, "Mind if I come in, sweetheart?" I wiped my face and nodded. He stepped in slowly, holding a napkin. "You don't deserve that kind of treatment," he said softly. "I've watched you run this place. Your father would be proud of you. Without you, this motel would have shut down a long time ago." I tried to smile, but my voice shook. "They don't see it that way." He sat down on the bench across from me. "That's because they've forgotten who built this place. You didn't just work here, Haley, you kept it alive. Maybe it's time you stop letting them take everything from you." His words hit something deep inside me. I didn't answer right away, but a quiet thought started forming in my mind. I had spent my whole life staying quiet to keep the peace. Maybe it was time to stop being silent. Maybe it was time they remembered whose name still mattered in this motel. That night after the rehearsal dinner, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing their laughter in my head, the way Tiffany called me the maid, and how Mom didn't defend me. I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, feeling that mix of anger and sadness twist in my chest. Around midnight, I got up and went to the small office near the front desk. It used to be my dad's space before he passed away. The room still smelled like dust and old paper. I turned on the lamp and started going through the filing cabinet. It was full of old motel records, receipts, tax files, contracts, all neatly labeled the way I'd kept them over the years. I didn't even know what I was looking for, but something inside told me to check the ownership documents. My mom always said she inherited everything after Dad died, but I'd never actually seen the proof. After a few minutes, I found a folder marked Property Deed Moore's Motel. I opened it carefully and began reading. At first, it looked like any regular legal paper, but one section caught my eye, the ownership clause. My father's name, George Moore, was listed as the majority owner. But underneath it, written in clear legal print, was something I had never noticed before. In the event of the owner's death, primary ownership shall transfer to his eldest daughter, Haley Moore. I read it twice to make sure I wasn't imagining things. My hands started shaking. The date on the document was from years ago, before Dad got sick. I checked for any updates or signatures showing the transfer to my mother, but there was nothing. No notarized paperwork, no changes filed. It meant that legally the motel wasn't hers. It was mine. For a long moment, I just sat there, staring at the papers, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it. All these years, I'd been treated like a servant in my own father's business. My mom must have known, or at least suspected. But she never said a word. She'd been running the place under my nose, using my work to keep it alive, while acting like she was the boss. I leaned back in the chair and felt a wave of emotions, anger, relief, confusion, all at once. I wanted to storm into her room and throw the documents in her face, to ask her why she lied, why she let me believe I was nothing. But then I thought about Mr. Carter's words. Maybe it's time you stop letting them take everything from you. So I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront them yet. Not until I was ready. I wanted to be sure everything was legally sound. I would find out how to transfer the deed properly into my name, quietly and carefully. I'd keep working, acting like nothing had changed, smiling when they insulted me, cleaning when they told me to. Because now, I had something they didn't. The truth. And I planned to use it. The next morning, I woke up with a calm I hadn't felt in a long time. I still wore the maid uniform, still smiled when they called my name to bring coffee or clean up, but inside, everything was different. I wasn't the helpless sister anymore. I knew something they didn't. That this motel, the one they looked down on, belonged to me. I acted like nothing had changed. When Tiffany complained that her breakfast wasn't hot enough, I apologized politely and fixed it. When Derek bragged about how his friends stayed in five-star hotels, I smiled and nodded. When my mom rolled her eyes and told me to try not to embarrass the family, I kept quiet. They thought I was the same quiet, obedient Haley. They had no idea I was already planning my next move. That afternoon, I slipped away to the office and made a call to a local lawyer, Mr. Daniels, who had helped my father years ago. He was surprised to hear from me, but kind as always. I told him I found the old deed and asked what it meant. After a short pause, he said, "If what you're saying is accurate, Haley, then you're the rightful owner. Your mother never filed a transfer. That means the property is still legally in your control." Hearing those words made my heart race. He offered to review the documents right away, and I promised to bring them by after the wedding. That night, the guests filled the dining hall again. Tiffany couldn't stop flashing her diamond ring, waving it in everyone's face. 2 carats, she said proudly. Derek says it's only the beginning. He smirked and leaned back in his chair, acting like he already owned the place. Once we're married, he said loudly, we'll give this motel a real upgrade. Turn it into a boutique hotel. Something modern, not this outdated little dump. Everyone laughed, including my mom. She clapped her hands together and said, "That's exactly what this place needs. Maybe I'll finally get to retire." I stood a few feet away, holding a tray, forcing my smile not to slip. Inside, I felt a mix of anger and satisfaction. They were already making plans for something that didn't belong to them. Later, I went outside for a moment to breathe. The night was warm, and the motel lights glowed against the quiet road. I looked up at the old sign my dad had built with his own hands. Moore's Motel. It was faded, but it still stood strong. Just like me. When I went back inside, I worked until late, smiling and polite as ever. No one noticed the quiet shift in my eyes. They didn't know that while they were celebrating, I was securing my future. The papers were ready, the lawyer was on my side, and the truth was finally unfolding. It was only a matter of time before they realized the maid they'd been mocking was actually the owner. And soon, I'd make sure they never forgot it. The wedding morning started in chaos. Guests rushed around, decorators shouted, and Tiffany's voice echoed through the halls like a siren. She was furious because her maid of honor, her best friend Lila, had stormed out after a heated argument. I didn't hear what it was about, but I could tell Tiffany had said something cruel. She always did when things didn't go her way. Minutes later, Mom came running into the kitchen, her face red with panic. "Haley," she said sharply, "you'll have to take Lila's place. Tiffany can't be without a maid of honor, and we're out of time." I blinked at her. "You want me to stand next to her at the altar? The same person you made me serve breakfast to this morning." Mom didn't even meet my eyes. "Stop being dramatic. Just do it. It's for your sister." I wanted to refuse. I wanted to walk away and never look back. But instead, I nodded and followed her upstairs. Tiffany was pacing in her dressing room, surrounded by half-empty bottles of champagne and scattered makeup brushes. When she saw me, she groaned. "Oh great, the maid is here. Perfect timing." Mom whispered something to her, probably reminding her she had no choice. Tiffany sighed loudly. "Fine. Just don't ruin anything. And don't touch my dress unless I tell you to." The room was thick with tension. I tried to help her zip the back of her gown, but she twisted suddenly, making the zipper catch. "You're doing it wrong," she yelled, yanking away from me. In the process, she knocked over her glass of champagne. It splashed across my uniform, soaking me from chest to waist. Tiffany gasped dramatically. Haley, look what you did. Are you seriously that clumsy? I stood there, dripping, my fists clenched at my sides. I wanted to scream, but instead I said softly, "It's fine. I'll clean it up." Mom just shook her head like I had embarrassed them both. Tiffany rolled her eyes and went back to admiring herself in the mirror. "Just stay out of my pictures," she said. I left quietly, walked down the hall, and slipped into the office. My heart was pounding, not from anger this time, but from anticipation. Mr. Daniels, the lawyer, was already there waiting for me, holding a neat stack of papers. "Everything's ready," he said gently. "Once you sign these, it's official." I sat down at my father's old desk, the same one I used to clean when I was a kid. My hands trembled as I picked up the pen. The sound of laughter and music drifted in from outside. Tiffany's perfect day was just beginning. And as she was getting ready to walk down the aisle, I signed my name. Line by line, signature by signature, I took back what was mine. When I put the pen down, Mr. Daniels smiled. "Congratulations, Ms. Moore," he said. "You are now the official owner of Moore's Motel." For the first time in years, I felt peace. Upstairs, Tiffany was yelling about flowers and photographers. But down here in the quiet office, I finally had control, not just of the motel, but of my life. By the time the ceremony ended, the sun had already set, and the motel lights glowed across the parking lot. The wedding had gone off without any big disasters, at least not the kind everyone could see. Tiffany and Derek came back from the reception acting like royalty. The guests followed behind them, loud and drunk, spilling drinks and laughing too hard. My mother was all smiles, running after them, making sure everyone had enough to eat and drink. I stood near the front desk, quietly watching the chaos unfold. Tiffany kicked off her heels and yelled, "Party's not over yet. Let's celebrate right here." Someone turned on loud music from their phone, and soon people were dancing, shouting, and knocking things over. One guest dropped a glass on the floor, and it shattered into pieces. Another spilled red wine on the carpet. No one cared. Mom spotted me and pointed sharply. "Haley, get a mop. Clean that up before it stains." I didn't move. I just stared at her for a moment, calm and silent. She frowned. "Haley, did you hear me?" Tiffany noticed too and laughed. "Oh, come on, Mom. It's her specialty. Maybe she's just waiting for a tip." A few people chuckled. Derek wrapped his arm around Tiffany and said loudly, "Don't worry, honey. Once we buy this place, we'll get some real staff." That was it. The moment I'd been waiting for. I walked slowly toward the front desk and opened the drawer where I had placed the envelope earlier that day. My hands didn't shake this time. I pulled out the ownership documents and walked into the center of the lobby. The music was still playing, but the sight of the papers caught people's attention. The laughter began to fade. I looked at my mother first, then at Tiffany. "You can stop worrying about hiring staff," I said calmly. "Because you're all standing in my hotel now." The room went silent. Tiffany blinked, confused. "What are you talking about?" I held up the papers so everyone could see. "These are the new ownership documents. Moore's Motel belongs to me, legally, officially, completely. I signed the papers this morning." Derek frowned, stepping closer. "You're kidding." Mr. Daniels, who had quietly returned to drop off the final copies, stepped forward and said clearly, "She's not. The property has always been rightfully hers. Her father left it to Haley in his will. It's just been confirmed and filed." Tiffany's face went pale. Mom's mouth opened, but no words came out. The guests looked around awkwardly, unsure of what to do. I took a deep breath and said, "The party's over. You all have 1 hour to clear out. Every room you damaged, every glass you broke, it'll be charged to the wedding bill. And after tonight, none of you are welcome here again." No one laughed this time. Tiffany just stood there, stunned, still clutching her champagne glass. Mom whispered my name, but I turned away. For once, I wasn't the maid. I was the owner, and I finally let them see it. Tiffany was the first to react. She set her champagne glass down so hard that it cracked. "You're lying," she snapped. "This is just one of your jealous little games. You think you can ruin my wedding because you're bitter." Her voice trembled, but she still tried to sound confident. "Mom, tell her she's out of her mind." My mom stepped forward, looking between us. Her face was pale. "Haley, please, not now. This is your sister's special day. Can't you just let her have her moment?" I looked right at her. "You made me the maid," I said quietly, "but this maid just became the manager." Tiffany gasped. You can't talk to Mom like that. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. The papers are signed. The lawyer confirmed it. Moore's Motel is mine, it always was. You just didn't bother to check. Mr. Daniels nodded firmly beside me. It's true, he said, pulling out his copy of the documents. Your father left this property to Haley. The ownership was never transferred, and it's now legally active in her name. Everything she's saying is correct. The room went completely silent. Guests who had been laughing minutes ago started whispering to each other. Derek stepped forward, his fake smile fading. Listen, sweetheart, he said, trying to sound calm. You can't just throw people out of a wedding reception. That's not how business works. I turned toward him slowly. Oh, I can. And I will. He crossed his arms. If you think you can embarrass me like this, I'll call my lawyer. I took a step closer and handed him a copy of the ownership papers. Go ahead, I said. You'll find out the same thing mine did. I own this place, and you have no right to be here. His jaw tightened. For a moment, I thought he'd argue more, but then he looked at Mr. Daniels and saw the official stamp at the bottom of the page. His confidence cracked. Come on, Tiffany, he muttered. We're leaving. Tiffany stared at him in disbelief. We can't just leave. This is our wedding night. Mom grabbed my arm, desperate now. Please, Haley, don't do this. Think about how this will look. She's your sister. I pulled my arm away. She stopped being my sister the moment you told me to serve her like a maid. You both treated me like I was nothing. But not anymore. I turned to the crowd. Everyone has 1 hour to pack up and get out. Damages will be billed directly to the wedding contract. If you're not gone by then, I'll have security escort you out. No one moved for a few seconds. Then slowly people began to leave. Some murmured apologies as they passed me. Others avoided my eyes completely. Tiffany stood frozen, shaking with anger, her makeup smudged from tears she tried to hide. Mom just looked lost, clutching her pearls like the world had ended. I stayed calm through it all. After years of being silent, I finally had the power, and this time, I wasn't giving it back. The motel was quiet after that night. When everyone finally left, I stood alone in the lobby, staring at the dusty counter I had cleaned 1,000 times. For the first time, it didn't feel like a burden, it felt like mine. The next morning, I called a renovation team. The old signs came down, and the faded curtains, broken chairs, and cheap carpets followed. It was time to start fresh. Over the next few months, I poured my heart into rebuilding the place. I renamed it the Moorhaven Hotel, in memory of my father, the man who believed in me when no one else did. Every nail, every color choice, every new tile felt like I was bringing his dream back to life. Guests started returning, curious about the changes. They loved the new design, the comfort, the service. Word spread fast. Before long, the hotel was fully booked most weekends. I hired new staff, kind, hardworking people who treated each other with respect. I made sure no one ever felt the way I had been made to feel. We worked like a family, and for the first time in years, I felt proud walking through those halls. Mom and Tiffany didn't stay around. They packed their things and left town quietly after the wedding fallout. I heard bits and pieces later, that they were staying in a rented apartment 2 towns over. Mom tried calling a few times, leaving voicemails full of excuses and guilt. But I didn't answer. I didn't hate her anymore. I was just done letting her control my peace. Tiffany's perfect life began to fall apart not long after. Derek's business investments failed badly, and his debts started piling up. Their fancy cars were repossessed, and their luxury apartment lease ended when they couldn't keep up with payments. Someone told me Tiffany even tried to reach out for a job at a resort nearby, but they turned her down after running a background check. I never laughed about it or celebrated her downfall. I didn't need to. Life has a way of balancing things out. I just kept working quietly and steadily, building the life I always wanted. The hotel was doing better than ever. Guests praised its charm, and a travel blog even featured it as one of the hidden gems of South Carolina. Every evening, I'd sit on the front porch, looking at the sunset over the parking lot that once felt like a cage. Now it was freedom. Sometimes I thought about how different things could have been if my family had chosen kindness instead of greed. But then I'd smile, realizing that if they hadn't pushed me down, I might never have stood up. The Moorhaven Hotel became more than a business. It became a symbol. Proof that quiet strength lasts longer than loud cruelty. I didn't need revenge anymore. Just peace. And that finally was mine. A year passed, and life at the Moorhaven Hotel felt calm and full again. The rooms were always booked, and the place had turned into something more than a business. It was a home for people who needed second chances. To celebrate the hotel's anniversary, I decided to host a charity event for single mothers and young women trying to rebuild their lives. It felt right. I knew what it was like to start from nothing, to be looked down on, to fight quietly for respect. The lobby was filled with laughter, soft music, and the smell of warm food. I walked around greeting guests, making sure everyone felt welcome. It wasn't about business that night. It was about giving back. As I stood near the buffet table, I spotted Mr. Carter across the room. He looked proud, holding a glass of iced tea, smiling at me like a father would. When I walked over, he said, "Your dad would be proud, Haley. You didn't just save this place, you turned it into something beautiful." His words hit deep. Without him reminding me of my worth that night of the wedding, I might never have found my strength. Later in the evening, something unexpected happened. My mother walked in quietly, dressed simply, holding a small purse. The crowd didn't notice her at first, but I did. For a moment, my heart stopped. She looked smaller somehow, not in size, but in spirit. She waited by the door until I approached her. Her eyes were wet, and she said softly, "I just wanted to see what you've done. I'm sorry, Haley, for everything." I didn't know what to say. The pain from that weekend still lingered somewhere deep inside me. But looking at her now, I saw someone who had lost as much as she had taken. I didn't feel anger anymore, just a quiet understanding. I walked her to a seat and handed her a plate of food. "You should eat, Mom," I said gently. "You must be tired." She nodded, tears falling silently. It wasn't forgiveness exactly, but it was peace. For both of us. She stayed for the rest of the evening, watching me work, maybe realizing for the first time what I was truly capable of. When the event ended and the guests began to leave, I stood outside under the warm South Carolina night sky. The lights of the hotel glowed softly behind me, and I thought about the long road that had brought me here, from being treated like a maid to becoming the woman in charge. I smiled to myself and whispered, "They made me serve them like a maid." But in the end, I served justice and myself. For the first time in my life, I felt completely free, not just from them, but from everything that had ever made me feel small. The Moorhaven Hotel stood as a symbol of that freedom, my father's dream, my redemption, and my peace.